following is a podcast brought to you by the Alex Kirsch Project.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Tucker Carlson has decided to validate himself recently with this rant about how his in-depth analysis of what happened on January 6 exonerates the Capital Rioters. We will evaluate and debunk all of Tucker's claims so far. The Tennessee House passes a bill that guts marriage equality, making it so that anyone can deny someone's right to be married just because. Governor Sanders in Arkansas rolls back child labor laws. Why is this, and what does she hope to accomplish? And finally, the Michigan House passes an anti-LGBTQ plus anti-discrimination bill. And what does this mean, and why is this a big deal? All of this on this week's episode of Current Events on Tap. Well, hello there, my beautiful listeners, and this is Alex Kirsch, and welcome to another episode of Current Events on Tap with your host, yours truly, Alex Kirsch. This is a podcast brought to you by the Alex Kirsch Project. That's me, Army retiree, truck driver, pragmatic progressive, and political commentator. If this is your first time listening, please do me a solid and hit like and share, and subscribe to my Spreaker, YouTube, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. This podcast gives you this week's current events, and I also do like what I like to call
the Beer of the Week.
The Beer of the Week is where I pick one beer and I rate it based upon price and presentation, pour, aroma, taste, and then I give an overall rating. Be sure to catch me every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Spreaker, and then catch me at your earliest convenience on the other platforms that I've listed above, YouTube, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Just type in the Alex Kirsch Project, or you can type in Current Events on Tap, and you will find this podcast. Be advised, there will be coarse language, especially during this episode, and I do apologize in advance, but I'm a veteran. It's practically a part of my vocabulary. So, anyway, sorry I didn't do a show last week, but last week I decided to take a break from it because it was my birthday. Not last week, but it was on the 28th of February. So, yes, happy birthday to me, belated. I am now 40 years old. So, what's really amazing is the fact that 40 is just such a crazy number to think about. That's usually the numbers like people like over the hill and stuff like that. But I still feel good after all these years, aside from like my bulging discs in my lower back, that sometimes I have my shoulder pain still from time to time. I still have like a raging cough from time to time. Thank you, burn pits, the whole nine. But anyway, you know, I'm still feeling pretty good about myself, and it was no different. I just wish for once, I just don't want to see any snow for a while, because, you know, snow, as much as I like it sometimes, it can be a real annoyance. But this is what happens when you live up in Michigan. I'm sorry, it's just the kind of the price you pay. Anyway, getting back into what's going on with the show today. I hope everyone's really been enjoying themselves the past couple weeks, and I can definitely tell you that the past couple weeks has just been crazy with the Norfolk Southern, more train crashes being apparent. But I tell you, this week has just been an absolute just catastrophe, let's put it that way, when it comes down to current events. There is so much going on right now, but I only picked a few certain topics because I feel they are very, very important, because a lot of them has to do with people's civil rights. I'm a huge advocate for civil rights. I was arguing about it with a bunch of idiots on Twitter about it, talking about how, oh, well, you know, people should have a right to deny people certain rights, which I think is absolutely, completely absurd. Because, like I keep saying, if you can justify taking away one person's rights, you can justify doing it to anybody. It's that simple. But anyway, before I actually go into current events, it is time for
the Beer of the Week.
The beer of the week this week is Gingerbread Stout from Big Lake Brewing out of Holland, Michigan. The history of it was founded in 2013 by Travis Pruder, Nick Winsemius, I cannot pronounce that name, I'm sorry, and Greg McKellar. It is an owner-operated brewery, and unfortunately I wasn't able to find out too much about the history of this brewery. They do have a lengthy list of beers they make in-house. They have flavors such as Cotton Candy Haze, Blood Orange Haze, Sparty Party, Michigan Amber, Leroy Brown, Healthcare Heroes, Barrel Aged Dark Star, and so on and so forth. However, today I will be reviewing their Gingerbread Stout. It has alcohol percentage of 9%, and the type of beer that it is made is an American Imperial Stout. Now, I'm going to give it on my rating system of mugs, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. Now, price and presentation, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. And I think I'm being generous, honestly. It's $14.99. I bought this at the Thumb Meat Market located in Carroll, Michigan. It was interesting enough. When you look at the can, at the front of the can, you've got a gingerbread man that looks like he's got lightning coming out of every orifice of his body, essentially. It's cute, but, it's just, I don't know. It just doesn't seem very appealing, honestly. The rest of it's like black and gray lettering. It definitely tells you what it is, but I just feel like no real connection. But it tells you the stout with a velvety mouthfeel and notes of milk, chocolate, vanilla, cinnamon, and ginger. Really kind of hard to read with the black and gray lettering, honestly. Maybe it's because it's kind of dark in this room, but I don't know. I just feel it's like 3 out of 5. And $14.99 is a bit steep for a 4-pack. I know it's 9% alcohol percentage, but, there are ones out there that are just like this, but, for a lot cheaper, honestly. So I'm going to give that a 3 out of 5. The pour, when you pour it out of the can, it looks like oil is coming out of the can, essentially. Slight foamy head, but it disappears really quickly. It just doesn't look very appealing. I mean, it's really insanely dark. Like, you can't see shit through it, honestly. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like dark beers, but when you pour it out of the can, it looks like a can of oil, honestly. So, I mean, I like it just because it's dark beer, but it's got to go for a 3 out of 5. When you take the aroma, the take-in, that's got a 4 out of 5, definitely, because it's got that deep, dark chocolate, and, it smells like really like cold coffee kind of deal. And, I like cold coffee. But it's got that coffee-like smell, the dark malt. It's really good, which I really like that. But the taste is what really sets it off. I was initially going to give the taste a 4 out of 5, but I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5 just because the dark, strong taste to it. It kind of reminds me of the s'more stout from Innovators Brewing Company, which is one of my favorite beers they make there. But it doesn't have nearly a sweet taste, but my God, is it smooth. It's just got a very smooth taste of it. Speaking of which, let's take a drink real quick. Definitely. That taste is absolutely divine. It is dark, but it's smooth at the same time. I really love the fact that it tastes so good. So I was going to give it a 4 out of 5, but you know what? Damn it. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. I'm going to give it an overall rating, 4 out of 5. What it makes up for lack and pour and price, it definitely makes up for its taste and aroma. I really want to try out some of the other beers because, again, I try out a lot of Michigan beers, but you know what? I live in the state of Michigan, so why not try out Michigan beers? But I want to try out some of their other ones because some of their other, I really want to try out the Cotton Candy Haze, Blood Orange Haze, and stuff like that. But this one, not my favorite one so far. I wouldn't turn it down. Like, if I bought it again, would I be disappointed? Probably not. I mean, it tastes good. I just don't think it's, like, the most appealing looking, especially, like I said, when you pour it out, it looks like a can of oil is being poured out, honestly. So, sorry, guys, but it's just, it's how I feel in this regard. So, anyway, once again, overall rating, 4 out of 5. What it lacks in pour and price, it definitely makes up for in its taste and its aroma. So, major props. I hope to try out some more beers from this brewery. But now, without further ado, it is time for current events. So this first segment, I'm going to be reviewing a 19-minute video that I saw when I was off duty on the road with Tucker Carlson. He was talking about how on Monday he released a video that was completely debunking every single bit that the January 6th committee found about the rioters of January 6th. Why do we keep talking about January 6th? I don't know. Probably because it was so significant. It was such a significant part on our nation's history. We had people that were lied to, told that the nation was being stolen from them, that the election was being stolen from them, and they decided to go just riot the Capitol and raid the Capitol. Well, Tucker Carlson, in his infinite wisdom, decided to take tapes from the current Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, showing how the people that rioted the Capitol are the real victims here. Not the police that were attacked, not the vice president whose life was threatened, not Nancy Pelosi whose life was threatened, but the people that rioted the damn thing are the real victims here, according to Tucker Carlson. So, it's about a 19-minute video. I'm going to be playing the audio for you, and I'm going to be debunking his claims here. So, without further ado, let's listen to what Tucker Carlson has to say.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. One of the hallmarks of people who are telling the truth, in case you were wondering how to tell the difference, is that people who are telling the truth are calm. They don't wave their hands around and make wild accusations. They don't need to do that.
He cannot go 15 seconds without frickin' lying. People lie with a straight face and remain calm all the time. He should know. He always fucking does it. Tucker Carlson is a significant liar. The guy lies all the time, even over the dumbest things, but I'll get into that later.
It's enough to say what they know. And if honest people turn out to be wrong about something they have claimed, they'll admit it. They don't double down on false. They made a mistake, and that's okay. It's not like they're claiming to be God. Liars behave differently. Liars are touchy, sometimes to the point of hysteria. They're hiding something. That's the whole point of lying. And they're worried you're going to find out what it is. Liars are fragile because over time, lying makes you weak and afraid. It has the same effect on countries, by the way. We're living through one of those clarifying moments, which actually we're thankful for, where we're learning exactly who the liars are. On Monday, we showed you unreleased videotape from January 6th. That tape proved that three of the most important claims our leaders have made about that day were untrue. Their claims were lies. We were not shocked to discover that. We knew there was a reason that congressional leaders had been hiding the tape and that reporters in Washington weren't demanding to see it. They were lying to us, obviously. That's why you hide things. But what was actually surprising, what we can't quite get over even now, is how they responded when they were caught lying. They didn't see.
Nobody was caught lying, you absolute dumbass. Nobody was caught lying, okay? The only person so far that is lying right now is you. You are consistently lying, and you have not backed up anything, but it's going to get worse. Trust me, folks.
Seem embarrassed. They didn't apologize. They weren't even curious to learn more about what actually happened on January 6th. Let's see the tape. No, they didn't want to see it. They exploded in rage. And then, as liars tend to do, they doubled down. They told the same lies they've been caught telling, but with even greater aggression this time. Shut up, it's midnight, they said as the sun rose behind them. Who acts like that? Well, sociopaths do. And in this case, the sociopaths turned out to be both Democrats and Republicans. The commitment to lying in Washington is far deeper and more bipartisan even than we realize when we follow this stuff for a living. Now, you sometimes hear people say that the whole partisan system is an illusion and that underneath the manufactured debates, the leaders on both sides are in fact secretly united in a common love of money and power and the deception required to get them. And honestly, we could never really bring ourselves to believe that. It's just too dark. But now we do believe it because we have seen it. Consider the death of police officer Brian Sicknick. Now, we still don't know exactly how Officer Sicknick died.
Okay, let's talk about how Officer Sicknick died, okay? At approximately 9:30 p.m. this evening, January 7th, 2021, United States Capitol Police Officer Brian D. Sicknick passed away due to injuries sustained while on duty. Officer Sicknick was responding to the riots on Wednesday, January 6, 2021, at the U.S. Capitol and was injured while physically engaging with protesters. He returned to his division office and collapsed. He was taken to a hospital where he succumbed to his injuries. The death of Officer Sicknick will be investigated by the Metropolitan Police Department's Homicide Branch, the USCP, and our federal partners. This is why Tucker Carlson is a problem. Not because he's a partisan hack, but because downplaying the death of Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick. The cause of death that I read wasn't from CNN or MSNBC, The Onion, OAN, or Al Jazeera. It was from the United States Capitol website. The date of the 7th of January, 2021. Now, who was president at the time? That's right, it was Donald J. Trump. In April of 2021, also reported on their website, it came to be that Officer Sicknick died of a stroke, but it does not change the fact that he fought against violent rioters, he collapsed, and was taken to the hospital where he succumbed to his injuries. What part of that does Tucker Carlson not understand? Oh, I'm sure he understands greatly. He just does not give a shit. Let's speculate onto why he doesn't give a shit. But anyway, let's keep playing this video.
We're not certain that anyone does know. No one has explained it. But after reviewing the previously withheld video evidence, we can tell you with certainty that Officer Sicknick was not beaten to death by Trump voters at the Capitol. The tape shows very clearly Brian Sicknick walking through the building in apparent health after the media told us for 2 years that he had been murdered. So they were wrong about that. Okay, they got caught. Here's the interesting thing. They won't admit it. Liz Cheney's tweet is still on Twitter tonight. Officer Sicknick was killed defending our Capitol from the violent mob on January 6th. No correction. Anderson Cooper of CNN still has not apologized. Quote, Officer Brian Sicknick died after being hit in the head with a fire extinguisher during the fight, he told us. Those are lies. So why not just admit it and move on? But
it does not matter. He was attacked by violent rioters / protesters on January 6th, and he died from a stroke because he succumbed to his injuries after he was attacked. It is that simple, Tucker Carlson. You're just a freaking dumbass.
But they won't. In fact, this week, the White House trotted out both the press secretary and Joe Biden's attorney general, the attorney general of the United States, to claim not just that Brian Sicknick was actually murdered by Republicans at the Capitol, but that other officers were murdered too. It's almost beyond belief. Watch this.
The rage of bipartisan lawmakers, you heard them all yesterday, you guys reported on it, who have condemned this false depiction of the unprecedented violent attack on our Constitution and the rule of law, which cost police officers their lives.
It was a violent attack on a fundamental tenet of American democracy, that power is peacefully transferred from one administration to another. Over 100 officers were assaulted on that day. 5 officers died.
5 officers died on that day. Now, that's just not some guy on Twitter. That's the Attorney General of the United States. That's a man whose honesty is central to his job. If you had a choice between IQ and integrity in an Attorney General, of course you would go with integrity because it's essential. But Joe Biden's Attorney General, Merrick Garland, is a liar. He just lied about something that is provably false. Who are these 5 officers who were, quote, killed that day? Notice he didn't tell you. No one ever tells you. No one ever shows you their autopsies. They don't want any detail. They just want the slogan. Now, they're counting Brian Sicknick. That's a lie. But who are the other 4? Well, those are 4 officers who killed themselves after January 6th, in some cases long after January 6th. But their suicides, we know for a fact, were the result of the Republican mob at the Capitol. It's just false. And it's not some esoteric fact. That fact is available to anyone who has internet access. No police officers died that day on January 6th. None. Not one. Some were assaulted, that is true, and their assaults are indefensible.
Okay, Officer Jeffrey Smith committed suicide several days after the assault on the Capitol. His wife, Erin, told the Washington Post herself her husband related to her the fear and panic he experienced the day of the assault on the Capitol and that he was afraid he might die. He was heavily medicated, and his wife said he was never the same. He was ordered back to work on the 14th of January, and he killed himself on the way to work. Now, if this was an Army veteran suffering from debilitating pain or severe post-traumatic stress due to what they experienced in combat, we would not question it. We would be screaming at the VA that he went to, why didn't you take care of this guy? But for some reason, we seem to be questioning an officer that committed suicide after experiencing something as traumatic as being attacked at his own nation's capital by people that swear they back the blue. This is Tucker Carlson, however, downplaying that. Why? Why does he downplay things like this? Why doesn't Tucker Carlson care about the boys and the men and women in blue? Is it just selective when he cares about the men and women in blue, especially ones that are supposed to protect our nation's capital against insurrectionists? What the hell is going on here exactly?
So how many were assaulted? Well, Garland said over 100. The Government Accountability Office says the number is 114, and we're just going to roll with that. We don't know if it's true, but we'll take it at face value. And that is bad. We are opposed to assaulting police officers in any context. We said that on January 6, 2020. And we'll say it again. We're against that. But is January 6th the worst assault on the U.S. government since the Civil War? That's insane. It's not even close. How about March of 1954, when Puerto Rican separatists shot 5 congressmen
Whataboutism
in the Capitol building? 5 members of Congress shot in the building. It's all bad, but the worst since the Civil War. You're just a flat-out liar if you're saying that. More recently, this is an event we all remember, Antifa descended on Washington, D.C. to force the sitting president from office.
Okay, 2 points first, okay? The point about the 1954 Puerto Rican nationalists is true. They did attack our nation's capital in hopes of getting independence from U.S. rule. I denounce that completely, even though it happened in 1954. I do say that it's still an attack on our nation's capital, and I've got to remain consistent. But this is not nearly as bad as like what happened then, of course. But I seem to recall Rand Paul saying Benghazi is the worst attack on America since 9/11. Now, I don't recall Tucker Carlson calling him out on that. Why? Because Tucker Carlson was also somebody who believes in that too. He still talks about Benghazi at times to this day. Now, I consider what happened on January 6th far worse than Benghazi. Why? It's pretty simple. Our own citizens attacked our nation's capital, and what's worse, our president at the time encouraged this behavior. He wanted this mob. He wanted his vice president at the time, Mike Pence, to go against the Constitution and overturn the electoral votes, something he cannot do because it's against the Constitution. Why is this? It's because Trump is a sore loser. This is worse than Benghazi, because Benghazi took place in a foreign country at our consulate because the Republicans actually took away funding to provide more security, and they, even Jason Chaffetz at the time even talked about how absolutely we take away funding from this. It was a situation to where it was a complete screw up on our part, but they found no wrongdoing. It's just a shitty situation. It's that simple. However, we are talking about a president encouraging a mob to go down to our nation's capital to overthrow and overturn a legitimate election because he fucking lost and won't admit that he lost, even though he knows he lost. That's why it's worse than Benghazi. And if anybody wants to say that I'm wrong, I dare you to see if you can debate me into submission about that. I bet you cannot do it. And I'm angry about this because I'm very passionate about it. Because I remember watching on January 6th as these people stormed my nation's capital over what? A lie. A lie that the election was being stolen from them, which it was not.
It was Trump, so that's cool. And while they were there, they set a historic Christian church on fire, St. John's in Lafayette Square. Do you remember that? You should, because it happened Labor Day weekend less than 3 years ago. And when it happened, the left-wing mayor of Washington, D.C., refused to allow her police department, the MPD, to assist Secret Service agents while they were under siege and getting beaten. No, she made her cops stand back and watch it happen. And they were very upset about it at the time. You may have forgotten that. Here's what it looked like.
I believe there are several fires raging now down this street, and this is what you hate to see. There are people throwing fireworks and who knows what else. And that crane is just fully engulfed.
They just set fire to St. John's Church.
You're good, man. Come on. Come on, man. Why you gotta do this, man?
There's burning a church across from the White House. Those are the George Floyd riots. So what was the toll there? Now, we're not going to guess. We're going to go again right to the government. According to a recently released GAO report last month, during those attacks, the 2020 attack on the White House by left-wing mobs, who were quoting, Federal Protective Services, the Secret Service, and the Park Police reported that at least 180 officers were injured during the demonstrations, including concussions, lacerations, exposure to chemical gas, and severe burning. So, while stipulating that all riots are bad, because precision matters, facts matter, the truth matters, here's the truth. More cops were injured by Kamala Harris's favorite mob, BLM, at the White House than were injured by Trump voters at the Capitol on January 6th. A lot.
Okay, here's some facts for you, Tucker, you idiot. That Sunday after the fire on Lafayette Square, there were 17 arrests. 14 were charged with rioting, 2 were charged with burglary, and 1 with assault. In the riot that took place on Lafayette Square, nobody second-guessed the arrests. Nobody said, well, those rioters legitimately felt that Donald Trump should be thrown out of office. To the rioters, I definitely denounced what they did. However, the next day after the fire, this is what your favorite person actually did. Okay, actually, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't say favorite person because we already learned that you don't like Donald Trump. But Trump took an entourage to include the Attorney General, to include the Army Chief of Staff, General Milley, to hold a Bible upside down in front of this burned down church. Now, this wasn't to show unity. It was nothing more than a photo op that didn't mean shit. But we did not question the fact that 17 people were arrested shortly after the fire on Lafayette Square. These people were arrested, they were prosecuted, and now they're serving their time. We don't question these things, but for some reason, you're questioning the people that actually invaded our nation's capital. Why is that exactly?
More. So again, to be clear, both events are bad, but here's the key. We only remember one of them. Why? Because the people in charge of history are liars. Liars.
The only liar here, though, is you, Mr. Carlson. You need to remember something. We remember these events. You're just choosing to think that we only care about one. Well, one is a little bit more important than the other, wouldn't you say? One was an attack on our nation's capital. That was actually a deliberate attack by our nation's capital. And the reason why was because those flames were stoked by the sitting president of the United States. He stoked those fires. He wanted that mob. You could say all day long that he said peacefully protest, but he wanted that mob to go down to protest and not just protest, but actually encouraged people to do horrible things to our nation's capital. You could say, oh, well, he wanted peaceful stuff, and I will call you a liar. The fact of the matter is Donald Trump wanted that mob to go down to that Capitol building to protest and do more than protest, essentially. It led to an event that, because he was telling people that your country is being taken from you right now because of an illegitimate election, and these idiots believed him.
And lying is bad. And on a national scale, it's deadly. It's corrosive of everything that is good in the country, including trust and your grasp on reality itself. And that's why they try to make you lie. Men can become women. Climate change is an existential threat, or whatever the lie is they're making you tell. They don't believe it. They know you don't believe it. But by forcing you to repeat it, they degrade and control you. They make you less of a person. They also hurt individuals. We told you Monday about Navy veteran Jacob Chansley. He was tried by the media, convicted of being a domestic terrorist, and sentenced.
False. He was tried by a court and convicted by a court. Big difference. Not the media, by the courts.
Sentenced to 4 years in prison. What exactly was Jacob Chansley's crime? Well, no one was ever very precise about that. Here's what the media told you it was.
In his horned helmet, fur pelts, and face paint, Jacob Chansley became known as the QAnon shaman. But prosecutors called him the most prominent symbol of a violent insurrection.
He's been in jail since January, and he's trying to get out, but prosecutors say he is still too dangerous to release.
Make no mistake, Chansley is a stone-cold thug.
He kept saying, I'm not violent, I'm peaceful, I'm a shaman. But then you put those images, what you were just talking about, you put those images together, and that isn't an image of peace. This is the new face of extremism.
It's the new face of extremism. Jacob Chansley is the new face of extremism. He's a stone-cold thug. Prosecutors say he is too dangerous to release. And most people believe that because why wouldn't they? They were told it, and there was no evidence to the contrary. And now there is evidence to the contrary. We brought it to you Monday. The video that we reviewed at great length over 3 weeks showed with precision what Jacob Chansley actually did inside the Capitol. And here's what it looks like once again. Here's video of Chansley in the Senate chamber. Capitol police officers take him to multiple entrances and even try to open locked doors for him. We counted at least 9 officers who were within touching distance of unarmed Jacob Chansley. Not one of them even tried to slow him down. Chansley understood that Capitol Police were his allies, Video shows him giving thanks for them in a prayer on the floor of the Senate. Watch.
Thank you, Heavenly Father, for giving the inspiration needed to these police officers to allow us into this building.
Contrast the reality of what Jacob Chansley did in the Capitol building on January 6th, the indisputable facts recorded on video, some of which has never before been seen, with the depiction of Jacob Chansley that you've seen in the media for more than 2 years. He's a terrorist, they said. He should be killed.
Shoot him. Yeah. Shoot him. Like, you burst into the United States, if he was dressed like bin Laden, would you have shot him?
Shoot him. Shoot him. It makes you wonder, who are the violent extremists here? So as you saw, and again, details matter because this is a man. This is an American citizen, a Navy veteran. This is a human being. And so what he actually did should be of deep concern to every American because he's in jail tonight.
Okay, let's just remind you something, okay? Jacob Chansley said this after he was found guilty. He made a statement. Men of honor admit when they're wrong, not just publicly, but to themselves. I was wrong for entering the Capitol. I have no excuse. No excuse whatsoever. The behavior is indefensible. I am not a violent man. I am not an insurrectionist. I am certainly not a domestic terrorist. I am a good man who broke the law, and I am doing everything I can to take responsibility for that. He pled guilty, and instead of serving 20 years, he is serving 41 months with 10 months' time served. Him being a Navy veteran is nothing more than Tucker Carlson trying to tug on the heartstrings of people who claim to love their veterans. Being a veteran does not mean you are given a pass on life. Timothy McVeigh was a veteran, and he committed one of the most horrific acts of terror on our nation's history as a homegrown terrorist. He bombed the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building because he felt the federal government went too far in regards to Waco and Ruby Ridge. Now, we don't try to jump at sympathies for people who commit crimes or acts of terror just because they're veterans. If Tucker Carlson actually gave a shit about veterans who are being mistreated by law enforcement, we would see him doing it more often. I can give you multiple examples of veterans being mistreated by law enforcement, but you don't see Tucker Carlson talking about it because he doesn't give a shit. Tucker Carlson has never done anything for any veterans organizations, any fundraisers, or even done so much as visit any veterans receiving care at hospitals. Now, why is that? If Tucker Carlson wants to talk about injustice done to our veterans, I say go for it. But he needs to show it, and he needs to show consistency for this. But Tucker Carlson wants to talk about injustice. He does, but he's not consistent in this regard. He won't. Why? Because Tucker Carlson does not give a shit about veterans, nor does he give a shit about people that are mistreated by law enforcement. He will, however, virtue signal that he does care about Navy veterans who dress up in like a cosplay gone awry and dub themselves the QAnon shaman. But he won't help pay the legal bills or advocate their defenses or not even visit them in prison, for Christ's sake. Tucker is doing one thing, though. He's increasing his ratings by pretending to care about veterans only when it suits him best.
What Jacob Chansley actually did was wander peacefully through the Capitol, shepherded by Capitol police officers who literally opened doors for him. When one was locked, they went to another. Dozens of officers stood and watched him. All of them had guns. Jacob Chansley did not. They never told Jacob Chansley to get out. The head of the Capitol Police today said he was trying to calm the situation. It was already calm. He was the only protester in the frame. They could have let him outside. They didn't. They helped him. We're not going to speculate as to why. We don't know why. All we know is what we see on the tape, and no one disputes it. We didn't cherry pick it. We didn't make it up. Once inside the Senate chamber, as we told you, Chansley said a prayer thanking God for the kindness of Capitol Hill police.
Okay, this is all a lie. He was asked to leave by a Capitol police officer, and Jacob Chansley is quoted saying, "Mike Pence is a fucking traitor." Oh, yeah. That sounds like a peaceful guy. He sounds like a reasonable human being, Tucker Carlson.
And good for him. They were kind. This was not a domestic terrorist. And that matters. But what matters even more is that the videos that we showed you after 26 months were not shown to Jacob Chansley's attorneys. That's a violation of the Constitution. And he's in jail because of it. Because the liars on the January 6th committee and the prosecutors who did their bidding, and that means Benny Thompson, and that means Adam Schiff, it means Liz Cheney, these people have this man's life on their hands. They helped withhold these videos from Jacob Chansley's attorneys. And that means the judge who sentenced Jacob Chansley, Royce Lamberth, never saw them either. And therefore, Judge Lamberth was able to say that what Chansley did was, quote, horrific. He apparently had no idea that Chansley was wandering around with the cops, walking through doors they opened and then saying prayers for them. We're quoting, "You made yourself the center of the riot," said the judge. Really? He accused Chansley of, quote, obstructing the functioning of government. But that's not at all what was happening. He was ambling through the Capitol, flanked at all times by armed cops who were directing his movement.
And yet I already quoted that he says that he admits what he did was wrong, but yet Tucker Carlson seems to have all the answers, doesn't he?
Meanwhile, prosecutors of the DOJ, the real villains here, falsely, they lied in court and said that Chansley was, quote, leading the charge into the Capitol on January 6th. They said he was, quote, the flag bearer for the mob, apparently because he had a flag. He was alone. And, of course, the media picked up on this and amplified it as the DOJ intended. Fortune magazine disgraced itself by comparing the man you just saw to ISIS. They said Chansley had, quote, the zeal to possibly kidnap or kill officials. These aren't just lies. These are lies that destroyed a man. So no matter who you voted for in the last election, you could probably agree that sending someone to prison for 4 years on the basis of fabricated evidence is the most serious threat to civil liberties we could possibly face.
Okay, yes, we could agree on that. Sending people to prison on fabricated evidence is in fact a violation of someone's civil liberties. We agree with this. But this does not apply to QAnon shaman. Chansley admitted what he did was wrong. He wasn't coerced. He wasn't forced to plead guilty. He did this because he knew he was guilty. He knew he did this wrong. But Tucker Carlson is not going to tell you that. Why? Because Tucker Carlson knows he's guilty. But he's letting his virtue signaling take control of the situation. Why? Because this is what Tucker Carlson does. I mean, you can't make this shit up.
And yet here's the thing. Leaders in both parties, the party that Chansley voted against and the party he voted for, have said nothing. Not one word about the implications of this videotape. The implications not just for Chansley, but for our Constitution and our country going forward. Instead, ooh, how dare you show this? What is clearly exculpatory evidence. And again, it's not just Chuck Schumer, it's Republican senators. Kevin Cramer, Mike Rounds, Chuck Grassley, John Thune, Lindsey Graham, of course, Congressman Dan Crenshaw, needless to say, Kelly Armstrong, all went after us. We're not whining about that. We don't care, actually, but it just tells you everything about the way things actually work. They're not loyal to their voters. They're loyal to each other. And they're willing to lie, really lie, and crush people. Mitch McConnell, Tom Tillis, and BLM superfan Mitt Romney, all weak men, and like all weak men, vicious men, were especially angry. Watch.
It was a mistake, in my view, for Fox News to depict this in a way that's completely at variance with what our chief law enforcement official here at the Capitol thinks.
I think it's bull. When you see police barricades breached, when you see police officers assaulted, all of that, or you had to be in close proximity to it. If you were just a tourist, you should have probably lined up at the visitor center and came in on an orderly basis. So I just don't think it's helpful.
It's really sad to see Tucker Carlson go off the rails that bad. The American people saw what happened on January 6th. They've seen the people that got injured. They saw the damage to the building. You can't hide the truth by selectively picking a few minutes out of tapes and saying this is what went on. It's so absurd.
Weak men are vicious men, and these are weak men whose attitudes towards an individual whose life has been destroyed on the basis of false and withheld evidence is vicious.
The only weak person around here right now is Tucker Carlson, honestly. And the only thing that's truly vicious is that the fact that he continues to downplay the significance of what happened on January 6th. He acts like it's not a big deal. And how the real victim of violence, it wasn't the police or the elected officials who were threatened with death or violence, but the ones who committed the acts. Apparently, according to Tucker Carlson, those are the real victims. You claim you denounced the violent acts, yet here you are cheerleading one of the people who took part in the insurrection on our nation's capital over a lie. A lie that you, in fact, peddled. Even you knew the election was not stolen, but you still peddled and lied to your listener base about how the election was stolen. Why? What did you hope to gain from this? Approval from Donald Trump, who you've now been exposed to as hating? What exactly did you hope to gain from this?
Oh, we cherry-picked. Really? What they're saying,
yep,
ironically, what they're describing, ironically, is exactly what the January 6th committee and the prosecutors in these cases did for 2 years. They selectively picked small segments of tape to convince Americans that January 6th was something that it wasn't. It was awful. We would not defend that. We hate vandalism. We hate assault. Was it a violent insurrection? It was not. Was it a killing of 5 officers in the Capitol? It was not. Those are lies. And they buried tape that contradicted and revealed those lies. So all we did was play the tape that they had been hiding for 26 months and show that there were American citizens, Jacob Chansley specifically, and others whose civil liberties were annihilated. And you can make your own rational judgments about what that means. Do you want to live in a country where that's possible? They don't care. Neither party in Washington cares. In fact, the leader of the Senate Democrats, Chuck Schumer, just joined the leader of the Senate Republicans, Mitch McConnell, in calling for this show to be pulled off the air. Now, that's not an argument based on logic. It's based on hysteria and the shame you feel as a weak and terrified person when your lies are exposed. Here's Chuck Schumer claiming for the first time that, like Sandy Cortez, he himself nearly died on January 6th.
Tucker Carlson ran a lengthy segment last night arguing the January 6th Capitol attack was not a violent insurrection, an attempt to rewrite history and erode the very foundation of our precious and sometimes fragile democracy. So yes, this morning I am furious. Millions of Americans are furious. I was here on January 6th. Many of you saw the footage as I ran for my life, coming within a few feet of these criminals.
Yeah. So we invited Schumer on, McConnell. Anybody is always welcome to come on our show. If we got something wrong, tell us how. If you think we altered the tape in some way, tell us how. But they won't. Nor will they answer the most basic question, which is why should a demonstrably nonviolent man who literally said a prayer of thanksgiving for police officers on the Senate floor, how is that man ISIS? How is he a domestic terrorist? How is he a threat to the Republic? Why is he in jail for 4 years? Shut up! Pull that show off the air! They won't answer any questions. But we have a question, which is how in a free country guided by the Constitution were these people allowed to withhold evidence from Jacob Chansley's lawyer? How could that happen?
For 2 years, the January 6th committee played hours of evidence, had hours of testimony, yet Tucker Carlson here saying things to think that he cracked the case. What an absolute joke, for crying out loud. The idea that somehow Tucker Carlson thinks he has all the answers to what really happened on January 6th to me is comical. I listened to every hearing, and every person that came forward and testified did so under oath. And I cannot say the same for the people who did not testify or who are election deniers. Every hearing I've seen of people who insist the election was stolen did not do so under penalty of perjury. They came in, they sat down, and lied their asses off. There was even one that took place after the election was over with. It took place in Gettysburg. We had a bunch of frauds sit down with Rudy Giuliani, Jenna Ellis, and the rest of this fucking idiots. They did not testify under oath. They just said they had the evidence. They did not provide the proof, and people bought it lock, stock, and barrel. Kevin McCarthy, the current Speaker of the House, leaks, and I'm saying leaks in the largest quotations I've ever used on my fingers because this is not a leak. This is just footage that was irrelevant to the January 6th committee because Jacob Chansley and every other insurrection that has been found guilty of their crimes are, in fact, guilty. Not because of any woke mob, not because they are so-called patriots being, held against their will, but because the conclusive, irrefutable evidence we have found shows they took part in an insurrection and attempted to overthrow a legitimate counting of electors to certify the election. Tucker Carlson himself said, on January 6th, we had a riot at the U.S. Capitol. Why did that happen? It's because of millions of Americans were convinced that the last election was not fair. Where did they get that idea? Well, it wasn't simply because the last president told them so. You're hearing that now as if they're animals who takes commands and do as they're told, but they're not animals. They're people. They're American citizens who can see what's happening and come to their own conclusions about it. They saw the radical increase in mail-in voting. Millions did, and it corroded their faith and the public's faith in our systems of election. Okay, now, why would Tucker Carlson continue to peddle these election myths even though he knew they were bullshit? Perhaps it sells. he is just as dishonest as the very people claim are liars. When Tucker Carlson was taken to court for slander, the lawsuit was eventually tossed out because Tucker Carlson's lawyers at Fox made the argument that Tucker Carlson isn't stating actual facts about the topics he discusses, and is instead engaging in exaggeration and non-literal commentary. So you have to ask yourself, at what point is Tucker Carlson lying, and at what point is he telling the truth? My best guess, you can tell when Tucker Carlson is lying is when he is speaking. Be enacted by the General Assembly of the State of Tennessee, Section 1. Tennessee Code, annotated Section 36-3-301, is amended by adding the following as a new subsection. A person shall not be required to solemnize a marriage if the person has an objection to solemnizing the marriage based on the person's conscience or religious beliefs. Section 2. This act takes effect upon becoming law, the public welfare requiring it. This is a law that was just recently passed by the Tennessee House, which basically means that anybody can now, a pastor, a judge, or even a clerk, can deny same-sex couples the right to marry. It's 2023, and we are still denying civil rights to different people. What the hell is going on exactly? I mean, just last year, Tennessee wanted to vote on a bill that would establish common law marriages, but they did not set a minimum age requirement. Does anybody remember the story about Kim Davis? Kim Davis, a woman that was a proud Christian that, former governor and presidential candidate Mike Huckabee championed as a Christian woman that was championing the rights, talking about how marriage is between a man and a woman. Yeah, that woman. Let's just talk about that for 1 second. Kim Davis is not a hero. She's not a woman that possesses great Christian values. Do you know how I know this? Because they did a little bit of digging on her. She didn't just commit infidelity once, but multiple times. So how is it that you're going to tell me that this is a woman that believes in strong traditional Christian values when she doesn't even follow these traditional values of staying loyal to their husband, for crying out loud? This woman committed adultery, infidelity, but yet Mike Huckabee championed her as a woman of strong Christian faith. But what did she do? She denied 2 men a license in order to get married because she felt it violated her Christian values. I'll put it to you like this, okay? I'm a spiritual person. I grew up going to church. I've attended many church services. I've gone to plenty of church services where they accept people for who they are, which is great. But I don't think it's very Christian, though. Either that, or I just think it's really awful Christian values, like the wrong kind of Christian values. If you deny people, consenting adults, the ability to marry one another because you think it's icky, it's not icky. You think it's icky, but facts do not care about your feelings. And I've had this conversation multiple times with these so-called wannabes that believe that their Christian values trump people's civil rights. I want everybody to remember something. I had a debate a long time ago talking about how to deny gay people the right to marry is no different during the 1950s when black people were not allowed to drink from the same water fountain. It's the same water from the same building. Why should anybody be upset about it? Why? It's simple. You're basically telling people you're not good enough to drink from my water fountain, therefore you get your own water fountain. To tell people, consenting adults who love each other, whether they're gay, straight, bi, trans, what have you, consenting adults, might I remind you, that they are not good enough to get married because you have a problem with it. This is a problem. It is a violation of civil rights. It's a violation of human rights, and Tennessee did not pass this because they feel, they're protecting the sanctity of marriage. No. They're doing this to fight back against people in general. They want to say that they are protecting people, but they are not protecting anybody. As a matter of fact, they are infringing upon other people's rights. Why? Because of some crazy notion that to allow gay people to get married, that God is going to judge upon us. Let me just tell you all something, okay? If you really think that us allowing gay people to get married is going to incite God's wrath when we've done far worse things than this, you're out of your fucking minds, honestly. It's completely absurd. I am completely shocked that we are still denying people a basic right to get married. Why is this so important for you? Why is this so important that you're going to deny people the rights to get married for who they love? Love is more important than government. And again, we are talking about consenting adults here. We are not talking about men getting married to 12-year-old boys. We are talking about consenting adults here, for crying out loud. You're only against this because it's icky to you. You are disgusted by this behavior not because the Bible tells you to, it's because you choose to be angered by this. I am just so perplexed that this is still an issue for you. The only laws that need to be put in the books when it comes down to marriage is if it's consenting adults. And what I mean by consenting adults, if an 18-year-old decides they want to get married to a 75-year-old person, I don't care. It might seem weird to me, but you know what? That person's a full-grown adult, and if they choose to get married to a person that's old enough to be their grandfather or grandmother or great-grandmother, great-grandparent, I don't give a shit. They are an adult. If you're old enough to enlist in the military, you're old enough to make decisions in that regard. If you're 17 and you've got parental consent, that's fine by me as well. Might be walking some shaky ground, but you know what? Again, in order to join the military, you need to be 17 years old with parental consent. I have no issues with that whatsoever. However, this seems to be a problem within the Tennessee House. They feel that it is more important for a person to deny somebody or two people that are consenting adults the right to be married in holy matrimony, or however you want to put it, because they find it icky. The only thing that's icky is this decision that was made. I just cannot believe that we have allowed this still to be an issue. You are willing to degrade and demean people because of their sexual orientation. That's all it is. Not because of any higher purpose or because God has ordained this to you. It's because you are an indifferent person and you are disgusted by this behavior, and you are letting your feelings cloud your judgment. In 2012, where basically President Obama made this the law of the land, that gay marriage is a federal recognized thing. The Supreme Court agrees that this is a federally mandated thing. What Tennessee is basically doing is now they are just finding ways to take us further into the Stone Age, essentially. This is horrible. And for those that are saying, oh, well, shouldn't states' rights have a say in what goes on in their state? Okay, let's take it back to the days of George Wallace. I recall a time when George Wallace said, segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever in Alabama. It was so bad that the National Guard had to come in and intercede on this. States' rights are not always correct, especially in regards when it comes down to civil rights. I cannot stress this enough on how offensive this is, how horrible this is, and good God, Tennessee, you've got to get your shit together. I mean, I don't even know how much more I can just take about this. I'm just completely I am absolutely appalled that they actually allowed this legislation to get passed. And now we're going to see what happens next. Because as of right now, they already are really sketched with the fact that they have not really established whether they want to have this mandatory minimum age requirement. As of right now, the state of Tennessee, you at least have to be 17 years old. But if that changes, what's the justification for that? And I'll ask the people that have a problem with gay people getting married. Let me ask you this question. I want you to think about this long and hard. Do you think it's worse for two consenting adults to get married or a 34-year-old man getting married to a 12-year-old girl? What is worse to you? Think about that. Oh, yes. So Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders of Arkansas is back in my spotlight tonight. She signed a law that makes it easy for children under the age of 16 to get hired for jobs. Now, this came less than a month after the Department of Labor fined a company for employing children as young as 13 to clean saws that are dangerously sharp with chemicals, especially at 2 Arkansas meat packing plants. Now, Governor Sanders thinks that this is going to protect children. She's quoted saying, Protecting kids is most important, but doing so with arbitrary burdens on parents to get permission from the government for their child to get a job is burdensome and obsolete. While they insist that child labor laws still apply and businesses will still comply as they do now, this is a problem. Okay? The fact of the matter is they are saying that children are not mature enough to be able to understand what identity they are, especially their sexual orientation. They say children are not good enough or not smart enough to say whether they feel trans or not, but yet for some reason they are old enough to understand to get a job. Some of these children are being forced into marriage. What the fuck is going on here? We are so ass backwards in this country. It is absolutely completely crazy. I just talked about how Tennessee is just going bass backwards, but now Arkansas is even going even further back in time. What is going on here? Sarah Huckabee Sanders has bragged about how she's going to make the education sector top-notch in her state, but yet now she's also signing laws to make it to where youth, children younger than 16 can now get a job now, where their parents can say, hey, you need to go out and get a job. What the hell is going on here exactly, all right? When I was 16 years old, I got my first real job working at a green bean cannery in Staten, Oregon. I worked there every summer because I was able to get there myself. I was able to show that I could get there myself, and I showed that I was competent enough because if I was competent enough to operate a motor vehicle, I was competent enough to operate some level of machinery. That's different. A 13-year-old child is not capable of that yet. Now, if you're going to have a child do yard work or work around a farm, that's completely different because those are your children. They are under your tutelage. You're able to mold them, you're able to guide them, you're able to, make them better. That way, when they turn the age of 16, they can go off and get a job somewhere. But if you are relying upon 13-year-old children to get a job to help your family out, we're in bad shape, folks. Let's take that into consideration. The fact that we are actually even condoning this or considering this as a good thing is exceedingly just what the fuck is going on? And I told you I was going to be cursing a lot because I'm just completely just floored by this. I am floored by the idea of children younger than 16 being allowed to go into the place of work when what should they be focusing on instead? They should be focusing on sports. They should be focusing on athletics. They should be focusing on other activities like choir. Maybe they should be focused more upon their studies, their activities. I mean, isn't this what the conservative base wants? We want our children to be focusing on 2 + 2 = 4 and not other things. But yet now we are allowing governors to make a decision allowing children younger than 16 to get jobs. What exactly is she hoping to gain by this? Are you hoping this is going to stimulate the economy that you claimed is going to be top-notch, or the education sector? These children are going to be exhausted by the time they come back to school, essentially. Children younger than 16 should not be working jobs. If a child has to work a job to take care of their families, that family is in dire straits. That's what you should be focusing upon. Not allowing children to go out and get a job, essentially. I mean, it would be horrible enough that a child has to get a job to take care of their family, which these situations are very much real. However, signing legislation, I feel it's not going to help children. It's going to exploit more children, actually. And I'm a firm believer in this. Now, this might just be happening in one state, but I see this spreading to other states across the country, especially in conservative states. When this law, this child labor laws that basically took children out of the coal mines, out of the factories, it was because these children are the future of this country. And again, I don't have a problem with them working on the farm. I grew up working on a farm. I grew up working, helping my dad, helping my grandpa around the house, chopping wood, but that's different. We're talking about actual businesses, people that actually have real hiring practices. This is a problem. But Governor Sanders thinks that she's actually protecting children. She's not. She's allowing these children to be exploited. And for what exactly? There is no possible good that's going to come out of this scenario. I don't see this as a winnable scenario, honestly. Instead of focusing on making sure that children have the ability to work, maybe you should focus as to why labor laws were put there in the first place. Why is it that parents need their children to work? Maybe you should be focusing on that instead. The last topic I'm going to talk about tonight, Governor Gretchen Whitmer is set to sign a law that protects all members of the LGBTQ plus community from discrimination. This comes after the Democratic-led House discussed the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act, which is to prohibit discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity expression. The vote was passed 64-45. Now, the majority of the Republicans who voted against this argued that it would infringe upon religious liberty of business owners and organizations. Now, that is something I'm definitely going to take issue with. A while back, I seem to remember that there was a gentleman out of Colorado that refused service to a lesbian couple because it violated his religious beliefs. Initially, I used to think, you know what? He has every right to not do this. He has every right to not provide services like this. My position has changed to this point because upon second review, if a person says, I'm not going to bake a cake because I don't think a white person and a black person should get married, would we be reacting the same way? I should hope not. Now, do I think the government should be the one to shut this business down? No. I think this business should just completely collapse because people denounce it. They protest it. They say this business is horrible. They are homophobic. They are racist, what have you. That's how it should be done. Now, the government could say, well, this is disgusting, this is deplorable. However, I definitely do believe that businesses should not be allowed to discriminate. Now, the only time a business should be allowed to do so is if this person is causing a problem. But, for example, if a member of the LGBTQ plus community decides, hey, I want a job at this muffin shop, and they are denied because they are gay, that's a civil rights violation. And that's wrong. There's no other way for me to put that, honestly. It is infringement upon person's civil rights, and to be denied services simply because you think it's icky is completely disgusting. Now, there was a representative, Mike McFall. He's a Hazel Park Democrat who happens to be gay. He is quoted saying, "We are often accused of having an agenda. The truth is, the only agenda I have is to live free from discrimination and to be able to walk down the street holding my husband's hand without fear." Which he has every right to do so. This gentleman here should not have to fear walking down the street holding his husband's hand or to show public displays of affection with his husband in public. Unfortunately, though, I have a feeling that there are still people out there that have a problem with what he's doing, which is horrible. It's disgusting that people feel this way. I'm not going to say, well, they have every right to feel that way. No, they don't. There was a time when people said that it was wrong for interracial couples to get married. Now, the focus has been directed towards members of the LGBTQ plus community. This is good. Michigan is still taking steps in the right direction. We are making progress still. I just wish the other states would kind of follow suit. However, people need to be shown the error of their ways. They're going to need to come to those own conclusions. It may take 5, 10, 15, maybe even 20 years. Hell, might even take 100 years for them to realize, you know what, we were wrong about doing this towards the LGBTQ plus community. Who knows? But the reason why this is so important, especially for the state of Michigan, is because we are recognizing that members of the LGBTQ plus community are not wrong. They're not evil. They're not people to be discriminated against whatsoever. They are just people. They want to live their lives the same way as everybody else. They want to be validated. I mean, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free, as Jesus Christ said. It is true, and it is the truth shall set you free, that these members of the community are just people. They want to live their lives the same as anybody else wants to. They don't want anything more or less. They just want to be treated as equals. Why can't we treat them like equals? You act like they're out there trying to steal our children and convert them all into gay and lesbian or trans children. That's not true. All you're doing is continuing to show your indifference. And I keep saying this time and time again. Mankind has always feared that what it does not understand. And all you're doing is showing your true colors, that you are afraid of that which you do not understand. So to close out tonight's show, I know it kind of went a little bit over, but that's okay. I started a little bit late, so I went a little bit late as well. But I want to take the time to thank everybody that's listened to the show and has taken the time to listen to the replay and has continued to show me love and support through all of my endeavors. I want to thank everybody that's listened, and I want to thank everybody that continues to show me love and support. Nothing more else to say. I want to wish everybody a safe weekend, and I will see you on the next episode of Current Events on Tap. This podcast has been brought to you by the Alex Kirsch Project. We hope you've enjoyed tonight's podcast. Thank you and good night.